Question here.
Yeah.
Sir, can you stand up, please? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Derek Crenshaw from Illinois. I got a couple questions. My first question was about the compromise where the Republicans got the presidency and then they gave the Dixiecrats or the Southern Democrats all the right to revoke, repeal all those laws that we had fought for after the Civil War. And my second question was, in the 60s, can you explain the big switch about Goldwater and Nixon? Because most blacks were Republicans, and then they made that big switch over to the Democratic Party. My last comment is I don't think the Republicans get their message out good enough to blacks.
No, they don't.
Because if they knew what the party stood for, then you would probably have a lot more blacks being Republicans and going back to their roots.
I think the first question was about the compromise. What exactly is the question?
My question is, do you think that there's blame?
Oh, okay, I get where it's... I think maybe your question is what the blame of Republicans kind of doing this and allowing that to happen. I understand the blame, but if you look at consecutive years after that, Republicans continually fought for the rights of African Americans to be citizens. I do understand the blame, but what happened was genuine politics where, okay, they had to come to some kind of agreement in order for the top guy to be a Republican. And you got to remember that Congress was a lot smaller then as well. You literally had a room maybe this size where people were in there talking about what it was that was supposed to happen. And so I understand that to the point, but the comment that, okay, so then all of a sudden it was Republicans' fault for all the Jim Crow laws and everything that happened after that has many fallacies. And your second question? Dr. Rice?
Francis, please.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk about the history of civil rights. I get asked this question a lot, being a black Republican. Why is it that so many black people are aligned behind the Democratic Party, the party of the Ku Klux Klan, the party that started the Jim Crow laws, the black codes, the party that with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a Republican, was fighting during the 1960s. It's, in order to understand what happened, you have to sort of take just a little bit of a walk through history. I know Princella has done that very nicely, but I'd like to fill in some of the blanks, because that question implies that there are still some questions in the minds of those who are assembled here and those who are listening to us. The Republican Party was started in 1854, 154 years ago, as the anti-slavery party. Abolitionists who thought that it was wrong to keep their fellow human beings in bondage. They began in a room a lot smaller than this. They knew they were doing the right thing in trying to push to free blacks from slavery. What they did not know was that they were setting into motion a civil war where brother would be pitted against brother, and that hundreds of thousands of Americans, mainly whites, would die to free blacks from slavery. Yes, the Civil War was a war between the North and the South, but it was also a war between Democrats and Republicans. And thank God, the Republicans won. And after our nation shed so much blood to free blacks from slavery, the Republicans then amended the Constitution to grant blacks freedom, citizenship, and the right to vote. And they also passed the laws of the 1800s, the civil rights laws, to make sure that blacks could exercise those newly granted civil rights. And if the Democrats had left blacks alone after they were freed and given their rights, we would not be having this conversation today. But the Democrats set for themselves a horrendous task of trying to keep blacks in poverty, in virtual slavery, and Republicans out of power. So they started the Ku Klux Klan to lynch and terrorize Republicans, black and white. And they passed those Jim Crow laws and those black codes to make sure that blacks could not exercise their newly granted constitutional rights. And they fought every piece of civil rights legislation from the 1860s through the 1960s and beyond. And when Congress took over Congress in 1892, they passed the 1894 Repeal Act, overturning those laws of the 1860s that had been passed by Republicans. And it took Republicans nearly 6 decades to finally get civil rights laws passed in 1957, 1960, 1964, 1965, and 1968. And the main proponent of those laws was Republican Senator Everett Dirksen, who pushed through those laws. And it was Republicans who were trying to get those laws into place, and it was the Democrats who were fighting it. Senator John F. Kennedy, at the time when he was a senator, he voted against the 1957 Civil Rights Law. He was opposed to the 1963 March on Washington by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He, with his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, authorized the FBI to investigate Dr. King on suspicion of being a communist in order to undermine that civil rights leader. It was Senator Robert Byrd, who was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, that filibustered the civil rights law, that landmark law of 1964. So had it not been for Republicans, those laws would not have been passed. And it was the Democrats who were turning the skin-burning fire hoses and the dogs on those civil rights protesters. It was the Democrats who were standing in the schoolhouse doors trying to prevent blacks from going to schools. It was the Democrats who were brandishing axe handler Lester Maddox to prevent blacks from patronizing his restaurant. All those racist Democrats remained Democrats until the day they died. And one of the questions was about Richard Nixon's Southern strategy. That strategy was designed to get the fair-minded people in the South to stop discriminating against blacks and to stop supporting a party that did not share their values. So those fair-minded ones who migrated to the Republican Party did so. They joined us. We did not join the racists. And after Kennedy died, the nation was saddened, and we lionized him. And the Democrats seized upon that opportunity to try to convince black Americans that it was the Democrats who were pushing through the civil rights laws. That was not true. And Republicans standing on the sideline while John F. Kennedy's body was still warm did not want to get into the fray and try to recapture their rich civil rights record. And so the media and the Democrats seized upon that, and they hijacked the civil rights record of the Republican Party and took blacks down the path of socialism that has turned our inner cities into economic and social wastelands. Socialism does not work. And the information I am providing to you and that has been provided by Pincella is not our history. It is history that has been uncovered by Dr. Eric Bonner, a liberal professor at Columbia University, Inner City Minister Reverend Wayne Perryman, who did a year-long research and wrote his book, Unfounded Loyalty. He sued the Democratic Party for reparations and an apology. The Democrats came into court, and under oath, they admitted everything that we are talking about today, but they refused to apologize because they know they can take the black vote for granted. Well, we're here today to tell them you cannot. We're going to uncover the rich civil rights record of the Republican Party and try to do what we did in the 1800s, free blacks from economic plantation of the Democratic Party. That is our goal, to provide education so that blacks can be freed from being trapped in these inner cities. The Democrats are fighting school choice opportunity scholarships. They are fighting reform of Social Security, even though blacks on average lose $10,000 in the system. They are fighting the faith-based initiative. Everything that the Republicans do to try to help blacks become empowered, the Democrats are fighting. Since the 1960s, over $7 trillion have been spent on poverty programs without the poverty needle moving very much. And the reason that is so is because when you subsist on a government handout, that's all you do is subsist. So we want to help black Americans to understand that the Republican Party is a party of empowerment, that we offer you a hand up and not a handout. And our message is to get a good education, become prepared for the jobs of the 21st century, become homeowners and small business owners, and you will realize the American dream. The Republican Party offers you the pathway to prosperity, and the Democrats offer you the pathway to poverty. Thank you.